Chapter 16. We're talking about tax, divorce, and bankruptcy frauds. So here's the thing these all have in common. In addition to frequently taking place in court, not all tax stuff, but divorce and bankruptcy is taking place in court. A lot of things in tax take place in court. But what they have in common is people are going to have assets taken away, right? So in a divorce, you're having to split up everything. In bankruptcy, you're saying, hey, I can't pay my bills. And so now the creditors go to court to say, well, that inventory is my collateral. Oh, those trucks are my collateral. And they take the assets back. Or even the court takes them away and sells them and pays creditors. So, and in tax, of course, the IRS is coming and they're going to garnish your wages, take money from you, take assets and sell them. So that's one thing they have in common. Somebody is having their assets removed from them. So what's the natural thing to do if they're going to try and take away something from you? You hide it. Okay? So they transfer these assets, right? They'll put it in other people's names, take it offshore, sell it and hide the money. So that's a problem, right? That's fraud. You're defrauding your ex-spouse out of their share of your marital estate. You're defrauding creditors. In bankruptcy, a person would be defrauding creditors out of their repayment. And of course, in tax, they're cheating the government. And these all can be criminal. Fraud is a crime still. That doesn't change just because you were married to the person you're defrauding. Bankruptcy, it certainly is possible to commit a crime while you're declaring bankruptcy. And tax fraud is definitely going to get you a stint at the federal prison or prison camp. So, what do fraud examiners do? Well, what fraud examiners do is they have a role in forensic accounting, right? So when people hide assets, it leaves a trail. The roles they can play is various. You can try to find those assets. You can be an examiner or a trustee. Serve on committees that are set up to determine what assets were done, what things were done with assets. Was it right? And you can try to help recover assets. And even in divorce or bankruptcy, you can just be a private investigator. So there's things to do. So bankruptcy and divorce frauds. Bankruptcy or divorce can result from fraud, right? Somebody can commit fraud. The spouse divorces them. Bankruptcy and divorce can be used to perpetrate fraud, and it can be used to conceal fraud. Tax fraud, we always think of the IRS, right? Because you and I help with VITA and do tax returns for people, and the most commonly talked about taxes are federal income taxes. But the reality is, people pay all kinds of taxes, right? Property taxes. Businesses have to collect and pay sales tax, and what frequently happens is they collect taxes and spend them and don't send them into states, things like that. So certainly IRS, people hiding income from the IRS is very common. And if the IRS audits somebody and finds out that they didn't pay their taxes, and then worse, they committed fraud in order to not pay their taxes, there will be cases. The IRS does have a division that's devoted to finding people who are purposely violating the tax laws. There are the CI division. Their law enforcement officers there badges and guns, can get warrants, can go find things. It's not unlike working as an accountant at the FBI. There are many CPAs who work in law enforcement, and they typically are involved in the fraud investigation, the criminal investigation, tracking assets, tracking money. There are a great many tax laws that are punishable by prison and fines when you try to evade. Now, making a mistake on your tax return is not a crime, and then you fix it and pay it and go on about your business. So you don't have to worry about legitimate errors when you file your taxes. But attempting to evade tax, failure to collect or pay over tax, right? So for the businesses who are supposed to collect sales taxes and excise taxes and things like that. Willful failure to supply information. So anything related to tax fraud. You can make false statements. That's fraud. So anytime you're committing tax fraud, anytime you're lying, you're not doing what you're supposed to do, you're committing a form of tax fraud. Interfering with other people. So if you lie for a spouse, things like that. Conspiracy, again, joining with somebody else to hide assets from the IRS. That's all not supposed to be done. And here's a little list of how many criminal investigations they've done. So when you think about how many tax returns got filed, it doesn't seem like all that many. But if they do come after you, you'll notice that most of these people are going to prison. So do not do things that involve an IRS criminal investigation, because 80% of those end with somebody going to prison. So as fraud investigators, it is possible to get a job with the IRS and do this kind of criminal investigation work. If you're familiar with how to track down assets and how to track down what people did with them, that's a job that will always be needed. When we come back, we'll start talking about divorce fraud.